In this final lesson for Christian practices, what we're going to do is talk about the idea of mission. It's not going to be a particularly long lesson, it's just going to give us a general idea of what mission involves, and we'll probably finish over the next few lessons' time as well, just going over some exam questions potentially before we move on to some other topics. I'm thinking that rather than going chronologically in the textbook or in the specification, talking about all of the subsidiary topics that relate specifically to other Christian practices as well. So things like family and households, the topic, the war and peace topic, as well as the existence of God topic. And then moving on to talking about Islam in more detail afterwards. Let me know what you think about that potential idea. I'm easy to teaching it in whatever order you want. But this lesson, I'm going to talk about the concept of mission. So the practice of mission is an important part of Christian practice across the globe, and it is should be noted that it is a global practice, and that is something that is very, very influential in the idea of mission, because it essentially is what the idea of mission even is. And what mission means as a definition is just simply the Christian practice of spreading the word of God. And this spreading the word of God is often done on a global level. People will go around the world and spread the word of God. The concept of mission is a practice that is supported by numerous biblical passages. So if we take ourselves back to the theology of Christianity for a second, we can actually find the grounding of this, of the justification for mission, in a number of different biblical passages. So for example, in the book of Mark, they say, he said to them, "Go into the world and preach the gospel to all of creation." So again, this is almost a direct one-to-one comparison of what should be done, what Christianity teaches people to do. You should be spreading the word of God. And it's also historically a very, very common thing that has taken place. The spreading of the word of God is really something that happens and has happened in all of history. We've seen this across all of Europe, across other states, for example, in Africa, attempts to be made across other states in Asia, and if you think about it, the sort of global expansion of empires that went and led to the founding of states in America and the colonization of America was done so under the auspices of this idea of mission, going to the natives in America, in Latin America, and in Central America, and spreading the word of God, teaching them, Christianizing these individuals, which is what they believed was the morally righteous thing to do. The modern practice of mission, though, follows a doctrine known as Missio Dei. Now, Missio Dei just simply is understood to be translated to mean God's mission. And the general practice of Missio Dei involves a number of different aspects. So there are a number of different things that go into this particular practice. It involves things, for example, the establishment of new churches and new church settlements in other parts of the world. You'll notice that if you go to Africa, for example, you will see dotted around Africa churches. You'll see churches being popping up here, there, and everywhere, and that is a sort of echo of the older colonial imperial tendencies of European empires that tend to happen. Now, there is a reason why a lot of the African continent, a lot of African states, are deeply religious and deeply Christian. There is a Christianity aspect to a lot of countries in Africa, and it's because of this. The echoes of colonialism and the echoes of mission, the echoes of going to these different places and establishing churches in these parts of the world. Similarly, as a result of these, the sharing of the establishment of churches in other parts of the world, we have the sharing of values and the sharing of views of Christianity, and this idea that I mentioned a second ago of Christianizing people, making people, turning them into Christians and converting them to Christianity. Doing and going to the different parts of the world to do charitable acts in the name of God is also something that is much more prominent, especially when in the modern context of Missio Dei, because it is seen as a work that is necessary for Christianity and for Christians to be involved in, to go in the name of God and go to do many Christian and charitable things. This is something that we see with a number of different missions all across the world, okay, going to maybe troubled areas, going to more impoverished areas of the world, and and volunteering yourself and volunteering your time, volunteering your expertise, or even just potentially giving resources to individuals who are in need and who are suffering, and they do so under the auspices of this being a godly thing to do. So, generally speaking, you can probably work out what the general goals of mission actually are. According to the World Council of Churches in 1991, there were two main goals of the practice of mission. So this is a very modern doctrine that is developed in 1991, okay? A few years after everybody who's watching this video is probably born. The practice of mission is twofold. The goal of conversion, converting people into Christians and into Christianity, and reconciliation, reconciling these ideas. Reconciliation and conversion are the two main goals that are seen as imperatives for the practice of mission, going around and making more Christians, essentially spreading the word of God. And before we finish, I just want to make a mention of a specific element of mission, which is known as evangelism. And evangelism is the practice of spreading the word of God by publicly preaching the gospel. This is a sort of a subsidiary type of mission that we can suggest. And again, the purpose of evangelism is similar to the broader concept of mission. It is to allow people to build relationships with other individuals who are part of the church culture. And one organization that has a very strong history of the practice of evangelism, of preaching the gospels, is that of the Salvation Army. And as a sort of general bit of a side project, if you want to look into, is to look into the Salvation Army, look into the work that the Salvation Army does. They do a number of different charitable things, and generally speaking, the Salvation Army is done and operates under the auspices of Christian doctrine and of the preaching of the gospel, which is sort of under the broad heading of this idea of evangelism.